Okay. Gotta find my remote to the TV. Alright. I want to put my I am dressed in my totally casual. I've been wanting to, we've been wanting to do a YouTube channel for a while, haven't we? And so, I've always waited for me to have perfect outfit on, got out of the shower, straighten my hair and all that. Well, that's not how real life works. So, we're going to just start talking about things. And this is a case that I've been following for a long time of Celeste. And we're going to take a look. We're going to look at this long crime sidebar. Jesse Weber is one of my favorite channels. And yeah, I started watching this case back in September. It was like early in the fall. Especially now that I'm taking a forensic science class. And what we're studying now is death investigation. So when I saw that they were asking to release the autopsy results, I was really curious to see what all that it would show. And the 2 seconds that I watched it, I decided then that no, I need to watch this. We need to talk about these things, and we need to talk about them openly. This was a 14-year-old child. You know, with all this stuff that's going on, with all this stuff in the world, oh, this just breaks my heart, you know. But let's watch this. Let's take a look and let's see what Jesse has to say.
Breaking news, the autopsy report for Celeste Rivas Hernandez in the David murder investigation has just been released. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, so thanks for joining us here on this breaking sidebar. As I mentioned right here, this is what we've been waiting for in the David investigation, in the Celeste Rivas death investigation. This is the coroner's report. So it just came in, right? So after David was arrested, after he has been charged with the death of, charged with the murder of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, this is what we've been waiting for. The cause of death, this has been sealed for months. And this is providing a lot of details. I'm going to tell you right now, it is very difficult to read through this. It is gruesome, but this is going to be a key point for both the prosecution and the defense. We know that Celeste's body, the body of this 14-year-old girl, was found in the trunk of a Tesla that was allegedly registered to David in Los Angeles back on September 8th, 2025. And again, this is going to be a key factor in this prosecution as he faces not only first-degree murder charges, because they're highlighting special circumstances here, lying in wait, financial gain, that she was a witness to a crime, but he's also facing sex crimes charges and mutilation of human remains. So I want to go through this. I want to bring on a special guest. I'm not going to do it by myself. I want to make sense of this. I'm bringing on Mary Jambelic, a former forensic pathologist and former chief medical examiner, to go through this. Mary, thank you so much for taking the time. Before we even get started into the details, I would be remiss if I didn't just start with the statement from the County of Los Angeles medical examiner. I'm going to read it verbatim. The County of Los Angeles Department of Medical Examiner determined the cause and manner of death for 15-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez as multiple penetrating injuries caused by objects. The manner of death is homicide. Ms. Rivas Hernandez was discovered at 1100 hours on September 8, 2025, in the front trunk of a vehicle in a tow yard in Los Angeles, and death was pronounced by a detective with the LAPD. A deputy medical examiner conducted an examination of Ms. Rivas Hernandez on September 10, 2025, at the DME's Forensic Science Center. The cause and manner of death were determined December 9, 2025. A court order initiated by the LAPD previously prevented the DME from releasing its findings. And this is the statement of Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Ode Akbo. After several months, I am grateful this.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so for those of you that may not be familiar with the case, Celeste Rivas Hernandez was discovered at 1100 hours on September the 8th, 2025, in the front trunk of a vehicle in a tow yard in Los Angeles, and death was pronounced by a detective with the Los Angeles Police Department. So, a deputy medical examiner conducted an exam of Ms. Rivas Hernandez on September 10th, 2025 at the DME's Forensic Science Center. The cause and manner of death were determined December the 9th, 2025. A court order initiated by the LAPD previously prevented the DME from releasing its findings. Why in the world have they kept this from this child's family? Oh my goodness. A court order initiated by the LAPD previously prevented them from releasing its findings. After several months, I am grateful this information can now be released not only to the public, but also to the grieving family enduring loss, said Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Ode Akbo. It is unfathomable they have had to wait this long to learn what happened to their daughter. The transparency of the information contained in our findings and reports is essential for empowering the community to make informed changes, to actively reduce fear, and allowing the community to take informed action. Absolutely. Making the department's information publicly available is not just about accountability. It's about social justice and prevention. By ensuring access to this information, we strengthen our ability to learn, to act, and ultimately to prevent the next tragic loss of life. I want to extend my gratitude to our partner agencies for taking the necessary steps of filing an order with the court to allow the disclosure possible. Okay, I'm going to continue with Jesse.
Information can now be released not only to the public, but also to the grieving family enduring loss. It is unfathomable they have had to wait this long to learn what happened to their daughter. The transparency of the information contained in our findings and reports is essential for empowering the community to make informed changes, to effectively reduce fear, and allowing the community to take informed action. Making the department's information publicly available is not just about accountability, it is also about social justice and prevention. By ensuring access to this information, we strengthen our ability to learn, to act, and ultimately to prevent the next tragic loss of life. I want to extend my gratitude to our partner agencies for taking the necessary step of filing an order with the court to make this disclosure possible. Mary, I'll first start there. It's not every day you hear a statement like this from a chief medical examiner.
No, it's not.
That's true. Sometimes we don't want to release the specifics about the cause of death in an active investigation because perhaps it's information that only the killer would know. And so that's understandable that might be obscured initially. But I think what the chief medical examiner in LA is saying is that they had this information, they wanted to release this information, and they were thwarted in doing so.
And when you hear, I'm reading from it, right? So the date of the injury, they say, is unknown. The place of the injury is unknown. Pronounced date, time, September 8th, 2025, 11 a.m. Date of examination, September 10th, 2025. And it was completed, right? So December 9th, 2025. Is that time span typical?
I think from September to December, that's reasonable because they're awaiting certain specialty ancillary tests, such as toxicologic examination. And it's much harder to do on a decomposing body than if it were fresh deceased. So the fact that that takes a couple months
What a beautiful
to
girl.
get that information so that that's
So
part of the
sorry,
whole
honey.
picture of, what happened to this poor teenager, that's reasonable.
And just to be clear, as we talk about this, David is innocent
This is David.
until proven guilty, and his defense attorneys have said that he did not murder Celeste, and he is not the cause of her death. So I want to go through the specifics right now. Again, it is not easy to hear this, but this is going to be important part of the legal case. So her cause of death has been ruled multiple penetrating injuries. Her death has been classified as a homicide. I'm going to read verbatim. Two penetrate, and by the way, they put diagrams in here.
This poor child. Poor child. I mean, not only. Oh. I mean, it's hard to tell what the poor baby had to suffer through. And then to.
As well, but two penetrating wounds of the torso, right abdomen with injury to liver, left chest with penetration of underlying intercostal space and cortical disruption of adjacent ribs. Other findings, bilateral dismemberment of upper and lower extremities, multiple additional skin defects. Death was pronounced at the scene. Autopsy examination was limited by extensive post-mortem changes. There, and by the way, this is something to keep in mind because you're talking about dismemberment and decomposition. There are two penetrating wounds of the torso with smooth edges that may represent sharp force injuries. The wound on the upper abdomen penetrates the liver, and the wound on the left chest penetrates one of the left intercostal spaces with disruption of the adjacent ribs' cortical surfaces. The left lung appears intact. The bilateral upper and lower extremities show full thickness dismemberment. Multiple other skin and soft tissue defects are present without apparent associated internal injuries. The etiology of these defects is not clearly apparent due to severe post-mortem changes. Post-mortem toxicology performed on liver tissue shows the presence of a low level of ethanol, which may be due in post-mortem changes or ingestion, and does not appear to be contributory to the cause of death. Let's start right there.
Mm-hmm.
What does this mean? And what does this tell you? And what are there still questions about?
Well, the body sounds like it's in a state of postmortem decomposition with some loss of integrity of the skin surface and some bloating and skin slippage, etc. But despite that, the medical examiner was able to identify two wounds that penetrated, meaning they went into the body, significantly into the liver, which would bleed a lot, and significantly into the lung, the space around the lung, which also would cause a problem with air and blood accumulating there. And if it were a freshly deceased person, perhaps the edges of the wounds would tell you the weapon much more clearly, but it's more difficult in a decomposing body. But they are trying to generally describe the wounds and the shape without saying it's absolutely a knife that did this.
And to be clear, I'm glad you mentioned that because earlier in the week, when they talked about the charges and the special circumstances, it was very specific, a sharp instrument they claim was used. They didn't say it was a knife or an axe or something. They were just kind of specific. This was something that was picked up on by TMZ. They believe defense attorneys would jump on this. There are two penetrating wounds of the torso with smooth edges that may represent sharp force injuries. So, in other words, is there room here to suggest that it was something else?
Something that was sharp enough to penetrate skin and underlying tissue and go into the liver and then into the space around the lung. Is it, what exactly is it? That's really the question, and I don't know that they'll be able to say exactly the weapon that was used.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I have not heard. I have class in the morning and oh my gosh. I mean, this is horrible, horrible.
Is there, and I'm going to go through this more. I don't want to ask this question. I have to ask this question.
Mhm.
Is there anything in here to indicate that she was alive at the time of dismemberment?
Not from what the medical examiner described. It sounds like classic amputating the body to try to compact it, to hide it, to dispose of it. I've seen that in a number of homicide cases. So nothing that suggests that these amputations occurred while she was alive.
When you go to other parts of the report, they talk about tattoos, and they say description that she had a tattoo on the finger. This is something that we've talked about before. That seemed to be the identifier, one of the ways that they identified her as Celeste. But when you go to other parts of it, other parts of her body, including eye color, cannot assess due to...
Okay. This is hard to even read or watch. What has this world come to? Bless her heart.
severe post-mortem.
What's the matter, Kiki? Oh, Kiki. What's the matter?
To the exhumed body. Taking all of that with the education and experience of the Los Angeles Medical Examiner's Office, they're familiar with the interpretation of wounding in a body and seeing it at this decomposition level. So, yes, of course it makes it harder. You have to really call on your knowledge base to
Many perforating the skin and soft tissue without identifiable soft tissue hemorrhage or associated internal organ injuries. They range from 5/16 inch to 1/4 inches in greatest dimension. Multiple superficial linear abrasions are also noted on the right dorsal hand. The upper and lower extremities show full thickness dismemberment with relatively flat cut surfaces through the soft tissue and bone. No discernible hemorrhage is identified at these sites. Multiple fragments of blue plastic material are found embedded in the cut surfaces. Representative fragments are collected by medical examiner criminalists and submitted to the evidence department on September 8th, 2025. The right upper extremity is dismembered 9 inches from the top of the shoulder. The left upper extremity is dismembered 5 inches from the top of the shoulder. The left fourth and fifth fingers are amputated. The right lower extremity is dismembered in 2 places. One site is 12 inches from the top of the leg, and the other is 10 inches from the bottom of the heel. The left lower extremity is dismembered in 2 places. One site is 9 inches from the top of the leg, and the other is 15 inches from the bottom of the heel. It says the head is partially skeletonized with an absent left eye, and there is liquefaction of the soft.
My gosh. What in the hell? An absent left eye? Yeah, you just scratched your left eye, didn't you? Isn't that horrible? I want to look at something. Let's look at. Look at something here. Alright, so this right here is in our death investigation class. Let me see here. I need to look at. Okay, so 4 stages of decomposition. So we got 1, which is fresh stage, 2, bloated stage, 3, active decay stage, and 4, drier skeletal stage. Alright, I'm just gonna, okay, so this is the Medical Examiner's Law in Death Investigation. This is a book that is written by my professor, which is Michael Kane. Excellent book. Alright, so this is his quote. Death may inspire philosophers, but death investigators write the last chapter of lives. Dr. M.J. Kane. So, the earliest, I don't know that we'll start from the very beginning. I'll do another video of it, but let's see. So, the death certificate serves as 3 basic purposes. Documents the fact of death, provides an opinion in circumstances, cause, and manner of death, and information for statistical and research purposes. Okay. Alright, so there are 4 causes of death, okay? We've got natural deaths, which occur from a natural disease process. Your accident, we have accidental or accident death as a result of a household, vehicular, occupational, or other accidental injuries. 3, suicide, which is voluntary or involuntary taking of one's life. And then B, homicide, death resulting from the purposeful or negligent action of another person. And then 5, undetermined, cannot be ascertained after all avenues of investigation have been exhausted. So I'm sorry, there were a total of 5. Okay, so let's take a look. Oh, now you want to talk. What is it? So when he refers to, or said that it is a homicide. Let's see, a homicide is the categorical manner of death, but should not be confused with murder or related criminal status. Generally, all criminal murders and manslaughters are categorized as homicide, but not all homicide manners are criminal. Okay, so just so that we understand that. Alright, hold on. So, We know it was ruled, they ruled it a homicide. What's the matter? Okay, so rule of thumb, an autopsy generally is conducted to determine the following questions. Is an autopsy necessary to certify the cause and manner of death? Is an autopsy necessary? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so death investigations are agents of the medical examiners or coroners. As agents, death investigators receive their duties from legislative authority and most act within the laws of their jurisdiction. Death investigators are also governed by their agency's policy, procedures, and rules. Therefore, it is necessary that death investigators be well versed in the laws, policy, procedures, and rules of the jurisdictions. All right, so okay, so the first step in the time of death estimation is to establish the initial window of death. And that's basically the time period from when the person was last known to be alive through the time the person is found dead. So we know what the initial is. Okay, so 4 different stages of decomposition: fresh stage, bloated stage, active stage, dry, or skeletal. Okay, so I believe we are at the active decays. Alright, so advanced decomposition. This is chapter 4 from Dr. King's book. Let's see. The bloated stage, active decay stage, and dry stage, or skeletal stage, is often and categorically referred to as advanced decomposition. Advanced decomposition of human remains is caused by 3 parallel processes. These are autolysis. Oh my goodness. I'll have to put my glasses on to even read here. Oh yeah, this is going to be a little more in depth. Okay. The active decay stage of decomposition is marked by advanced decay. This is interesting. Rule, see, time of death estimation from anatomical observations. So 1 week in the air equals 2 weeks in water. 1 week in air equals 8 weeks in soil. Heat accelerates decomposition. Cold retards decomposition. And when they're referring to the skeletal, it means there's a lack of soft tissue. All right, they're talking about the blunt, sharp force injury. All right, let's see here. Okay, so you got blunt force injuries, which is basically injuries caused by a non-sharp object. So we know it wasn't blunt. It obviously was sharp, as they said. Sharp force trauma. Okay, trauma. My goodness. Sharp force injury is generally divided into 2 categories: cuttings and thrustings. Thrustings are stab wounds. Incision cuts would be the cuttings. Let's see here. Okay, so stab wounds or puncture wounds are made by a sharp instrument that is thrust into the body. The depth of the wound is greater than the width, and the depth may or may not show the length of the blade. For example, a short knife of only 3 inches thrust into a person's stomach may show a depth of 4 or more inches because the exterior of the torso surface may give 2 to 3 inches under the power of the thrust. The characteristics of the wound may suggest the type of weapon. For example, a hunting knife sharp on one side will show a different pattern than a dagger sharp on both sides. A deep thrust can bruise the margins of the wound, causing a hilt mark, and the wound itself may form patterns or odd shapes, which may suggest the type of weapon. And it says, imagine a barbecue fork or scissors. If the weapon has sharp point and thick back, margins of stab wounds will display this formation. Movement of the weapon or the victim can enlarge the wound, and investigators must also be aware of repeated thrust into the same wound. Multiple wounds from the same wound may or may not be alike, and the appearance of the wound will be influenced by the location of the body. Investigators should always be alert for parts of the weapons that may be left in the wound. Alright, that really doesn't apply. Here we go. Often, forensic pathologists are asked to match a weapon found at the scene or on the subject with injuries on the victim. Investigators should not put the questioned instrument back into the wound to see if it fits. Probably no. Certainly, hopefully they do not do that. Alright. What's the matter? Alright. I wanted to share a little bit of that with you. Why did the poor child not have a left eye? I mean, sounds like she was stabbed in specific locations to intentionally to what? Lose more blood, to drain her blood quicker, like
Soft tissues. What does this tell you about how she was dismembered?
More than $1,000 weight loss.
oh guys, I just don't know. Oh. Oh no.
Skeletonized to the exhumed body. Taking all of that with the education and experience of the Los Angeles Medical Examiner's Office, they're familiar with the interpretation of
To do something like this, and based on the description, I hate to say this, is this someone you would suggest is sloppy, that has never done this before? Does it look disoriented in a way? Just trying to make sense of it.
You know, it's interesting because many people, when they try to dismember a body, they'll try to go for the joint. Somehow they think that's a good place to go, when that's a really complicated place to disarticulate a limb.
Now, it says other female reproductive tract findings, severe postmortem changes noted. This I just want to highlight because one of the allegations, right, that has been put forward is, that David was allegedly engaging in illegal sex acts with a minor, right, with presumably Celeste. And I know that there was at one point a question of, was she pregnant or not? There's nothing to indicate this. Is there something about this particular section that stands out to you?
No, the report indicates the uterus was normal, so it wasn't enlarged as it would be in pregnancy. There wasn't anything seen on the inner lining of the uterus that would be seen in pregnancy. The external genitalia, the description is of decomposed tissue, so whether there was forceful.
Okay.
That's the more definitive test. So the not detected results after the screening is more relevant, that she didn't have that in her system. The alcohol, you can form alcohol, ethanol, after death in the decomposition process. And so
What is it, honey?
having some there in a decomposed body is not indicative of imbibing.
Activity, partial skeletonization and skin slippage goes on. At another point, she was dismembered and was inside a black body bag and black trash bag. We've known some of this before, but it's just so difficult to hear.
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna have to end. I gotta process this. Bless this poor child. Join me next time.